It's really a pleasure to be here with my peers. Episcopalianism came to the reservations in South Dakota amongst the Dakota, Lakota, Nakota people in about the 1860s. The folks that I lived with, the Yankton Sioux, we were civilized by the Episcopalians and Presbyterians after we moved on a reservation in about 1858. You had a choice then of being a Presbyterian and Episcopalian, so they divided us up. A to K, Presbyterian, everybody afterwards became Episcopalian. The problem was that we didn't have English names. So then they went to the Bible, and so you find a lot of us have names like Abraham, Jesus. I see that it was probably the best thing that could have happened to us. Otherwise, we would have been swallowed up into, who knows? I think we would have probably went to war and ended up being survivors living in Oklahoma Territory. I do have relatives that come from farther out in Pine Ridge, and out there, one of the things they always say is they sued Custer. But this church that came in, it worked for us because the message that they brought. Probably the story that I remember best came from one of my relatives who was a priest, and his father was the first original Episcopalian that was accepted into the priesthood. And if you go to the cathedral in Washington, D.C. and go find the statue, you'll find a Deloria back there. And so that's that family that my father-in-law mentioned about me being tied into the church. We've always had several different men and women working in the church. My grandmother, Grandma Dora Schutzoff-Bruyere, who works as a deacon today at the Cheyenne River Reservation, is carrying on the flag for us right now. Unfortunately, she's 94 years old, and I don't know if she has any successors picked. I hope she isn't looking south to Mexico, because I ain't coming back up in that cold territory. The original missionaries, what really saved their skins, and probably their hair, was that when they gave the story of Jesus Christ, they gave the story of what a Lakota and a Dakota and a Nakota aspired to as human beings. We go by four ideals, or four principles, four cardinal points that we aspire to and we teach our children to try to reach. Generosity. Generosity, certainly, when you look at it, we had different interpretations of what it meant to be wealthy, with how many horses you had, okay? But the first one was how many relatives you had. And it made sense. I mean, it made sense from a standpoint of being surrounded by people that loved you. But generosity was one of the cardinal points. The other one was wisdom. Wisdom, in order for you to become go in this circle and become a person that could learn how to live with all your relatives, that was something we aspired to. The other two were bravery and fortitude, and I'm always asked about that. Of course, I interpret it this way. You have to be brave to step into new territory, to do something different. And in order to succeed at it, you have to have the fortitude to do that. Well, when they introduced Jesus Christ to the Lakota people, we learn the stories about this man. And we know certainly he was a very generous man. He fed the people from a loaf of bread and one fish, and he fed the people. And that to us is a cardinal point of generosity. He certainly had wisdom. I can quote forever, a thing kept me alive in war was, well, two things. One, I was damn lucky. And the other thing, I think the reason I was lucky is because I always remember the 23rd Psalm. And that's kind of wisdom that I think that the Indians picked up on and kept it in their heads. And we know that he was a very brave man to stand up to the Roman Empire. Roman Empire at that time was probably, it was a civilizing thing, I guess. Depends on your interpretation of civilization. But it was a big machine, and you could get run over. And he had fortitude. He worked at it until he was, unfortunately, met an early death. Indians always worried about, or wondered about that is a better word. Said, hey, if this guy was so good, why'd you kill him? We never could figure that one out. But these four cardinal virtues fit in exactly on what the Lakota people aspired to. And so it was very simple. For us, we just said, hey, we like the guy. He's Lakota. He's Lakota. He's us. So it was easy for us to pick up on this whole idea of Jesus Christ bringing a message to us and giving us hope for the next day. Okay. And I said it was good for us at that particular time because it also offered all these great little benefits. For instance, this gathering that we have here today, for Indian people on reservations, it was a good thing to go to the church and to meet in these different societies. I was telling David about when I was a little bitty guy, I can remember going up to the Mary and Martha Guild Society, which all the Episcopal women belonged to. And one of the things that they did were made quilts, and they would sit around and visit and make quilts. Beautiful, beautiful quilts. For the men, we also had the different groups that would meet. For instance, our choir. There was an interesting story there, too. There was a lot of intermarriage, and I don't know why this turned out like it is, but if you go and look at the old pictures, you see the names, and you see the Indian names weren't in the choir. They were mostly names like Abraham Smith, you know, and there was an Abraham Lincoln, and there was a Washington. Okay, but the Episcopal Church is alive and well on the reservation today. It gave us the bridge and invited us into this new wisdom that came to us from Europe. It gave us a connection to know that there were people in the world that actually had thought through and found a philosophy of life that worked. I can remember a lot of stories, but I know that the program's really short and we want to have a question and answer period. And I really, when I look at it from my perspective, I guess it's a privilege. It's been my privilege to be able to be a guy that can shut his mouth up and listen. And I had the privilege of growing up with a lot of great people that I see being replicated on reservations today. I was one of the, I think when I got my PhD, I think there were about seven of us Sioux in the world that had a PhD. Today we have about 40. So it's changing. It's changing. Indian country is changing very fast. You go out to the Pine Ridge Reservation, for instance, and it's, I'd say it's as big as Texas. And you find a house about like you do out in West Texas, once every square 5 miles. And it's the same thing. You'll see that great big antenna or dish but thinking about it, you see this very isolated group of people or family living out there, and they have touch with the world through all these new communication things that I have no idea what are anymore. So I'm going to stop there. And most church services in Episcopal Church today in South Dakota are held in Dakota. The Presbyterians in the 1820s, when they first came out to Minnesota, what is today Minnesota? I don't remember the technical term, but they wrote the Bible in Dakota and they wrote the services. They were also contracted to do the educational part, and the Presbyterians thought that the best way to teach was in the language, and so that's what they did. They built a orthography, I guess, and a grammar book, and taught the Indians in the language. In 1858, when Bishop Hare, I guess it was, came to our reservation and started the schools, and they started up about 1861 or 62. Remember, that was during the Civil War, so there were budget problems, right? They taught in Dakota. So all the images were transmitted in Dakota, and it's remarkable how a culture can internalize another culture through the language. So in that sense, that was there. The other part of it is that probably about 1885, I don't know, I wrote a book on this, I should remember, right? The Native American Church came up our way. And Native American Church was essentially a celebration that was using peyote, which actually goes here in Texas. And that came from the Huichol Indians in Mexico in about 6,000 years ago. And that incorporated parts of Christianity. And then we had the pipe, which was the other spiritual ceremony that we had. And that has about 7 different elements to it that are practiced with the pipe. And so what we have is what archaeologists and anthropologists call syncretism, where they started exchanging different rituals into the church and within the pipe ceremony and within the Native American church. And so they did, and it became, today you will find a pipe carrier, which I am, and I grew up with the Episcopalian Church and as a Native American church member, integrating 3 different systems. Basically, 6 generations back, Bruyère came down from Canada. His father was a Frenchman that was actually fought with the British. Because he was a Protestant, or he was a Catholic and he was kicked out of France, or he was a Protestant and kicked out of France. I don't know. He joined the British Army because he couldn't get another job, and he commanded a regiment that was shipped to Canada. And one of his children came to St. Louis, and he came up the river with a paddle, and found it so beautiful he stayed up there. And that's where we came from. There's some very interesting Bruyères. Johnny Bruyère, if you go Google, anybody Googles, go in and type in Johnny Bruyère. Johnny Bruyère was one of the first sons out of that first family, and he was, I think he was the guy that taught Sitting Bull how to write. He worked for all the generals up in the northern department because he could speak French, English, German, and then Sioux, the 4 dialects of Sioux. He could speak Cheyenne, he could speak Crow, Apsaraka. He could speak with the tribes that came out of the Nez Perce. So he was very, that's why I like to call myself a general raconteur. Trying to ride his shirt tail. I consider myself Indian. Yeah. All of us for instance, in Lakota, in Dakota and Nakota, we know ourselves first of all as Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, and most of it can be interpreted as we have our own name for ourselves, and that can be interpreted as the people. That's kind of the people. You're right, and we didn't, like in our language, we don't have a word for enemy. We have it's toka, which means he doesn't speak my language. You know, the Indian name came from an Italian, I guess, who got lost, and he just managed to run into some land, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to India. These got to be Indians." So that's the way that goes. A lot of Indian people today don't like it because of that reason. The name that became popular in the 60s when I don't know who brought it up, but they start calling us Native American. Well, yeah, my interpretation of Native American is anybody that's born in the Americas is a native. And then we've been called indigenous, which seems to be a pretty good name. But I don't, I like Sioux myself, and I like Indian, you know, and I don't like, if you call me indigenous, I'd say, well, yeah, I guess, you know. They will, whoever you're talking to, if it's important you find out what race they are. And usually it's a color thing, right? You see them a little different color, and you have a curiosity. It is definitely a curiosity. So in this case, when you're dealing with a human being, just be a good human being, and most people are that way. But it's not offensive. No, I don't think so. You know, this is the thing we usually I get paid what $8,000 a semester to play with. It's just like University of North Dakota. They're called the Fighting Sioux. I like that. You know, hey, Fighting Irish, Fighting Sioux. Yeah, heck yeah. What do you want me to call myself? To lay down and get killed, Sioux? No. I'm a fighting Sioux, you know. And sure. In our case here, we started as a child and we worked through into the different stages, and we come back to the beginning, where our spirit it departs us, but it always stays within this circle. So we recognize that all of us as human beings go through that, and so we have a term, and it's a prayer, actually. We always say, all my relatives, mitakuye o yasi, and that means that we are all of us within this circle of life, and we are all related. We are all related, and when we recognize the fact that we are all related, then we can become peaceful people within ourselves and with those we meet. So I want to leave that with you. Mitakuye o yasi. All my relatives, thank you. Okay. If you have any questions, ask Mr. Greathouse. He'll answer everything. Thank you. Thank you very much.